Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Chanyata. So it has been just over a month since the garden went in. So today, as I'm out here working this morning, I'm going to kind of give you guys a little update as to where everything is at, show you some of the things that I've been doing right, show you some of the things that I know I've been doing wrong. We'll talk a little bit about pruning, we'll talk a little bit about mulching, and we'll just get everybody all caught up with how things are going out here. So we'll start off here talking a little bit about watering. Specifically, we're going to start here with the tomatoes. So when you're watering, you really want to water down at the base of the plant, especially with the tomatoes. What you don't want to do is you don't want to come way up here and water all on the leaves. First, because you need all the water down at the roots, and if you're running it down off of the leaves, it's not getting down at the base of the plant. At least most of it isn't getting down at the base of the plant where all the roots are. Secondly, if you keep the top of it all wet, you can encourage blights and disease and things like that. So I would big time recommend for watering getting one of these wands so you're not stuck bending over. You can get right down at the base of the plant and make sure you're getting the water where you actually need it. The next thing you're going to want to consider is you're going to want to get some type of mulch down. So here on this row of tomatoes, I used straw mulch. I also tried some wood chip mulch on some other stuff here in the garden, and I'm going to kind of see which one I like more, which one's more effective. The mulch is sort of a dual purpose thing. First purpose being is moisture retention. So after you water, it's going to help hold that moisture in there and kind of be a barrier in between the sun and the dirt. The second thing is for weed suppression. So we'll show you that here in a second, how it helps with the weed suppression. Then a couple last things you're going to want to consider when it comes to watering is the time when you water. The best time to water your plants is early in the morning. Give them a good soak. Make sure that you really get that ground soaked. You don't want to water too often, but when you do water, you want to make sure you water deeply. So morning is best before the sun or the heat of the day. You don't really want to water during the heat of the day, kind of for obvious reasons. It'll kind of just evaporate off and kind of be a waste. But if you can't get to it early in the morning, the next best time to get to it is later on in the evening, once the sun's not so intense, so it can get good and soaked and then not all evaporate right off like it would if you did it in the middle of the heat of the day. Then, like I was saying, the other beneficial thing to mulching around your plants besides the water retention is weed suppression. So you can see over here on this row, I used wood chips. I think you can kind of tell all we really got going on over here are the tomato plants. So it seems like the wood chips are doing a little bit better than what I've been able to get out of the straw. But the nice thing is, besides blocking out that sunlight and keeping the weeds from coming up, the little bit of weeds that do come up, they don't form great roots. So they pretty much, where is it? Pluck right out, roots and all, because without any good sunlight, they don't really get to form good roots. So the few that there are, most of the time, they just come right out, root and stem. Now the next thing I'm going to talk about is pruning. There's two big things that I'm looking at for when I'm pruning the tomato plants. The first one is I don't want the lower branches that are hanging and running along the ground. So I'm going to prune all of those off. So I don't know if you can kind of see here, we've got some of these lower branches here that are coming out along the ground. So what I do is you just come in and just pinch them right off, because these aren't going to be fruit-bearing branches. So the plant is literally just wasting energy keeping these alive down here. So you just go and you pinch them right off. The other benefit to keeping those lower branches trimmed off, it's not so much getting to be an issue now since it's been a while, but at first when the plants are first starting to grow, you want to pinch off those lower branches, those unnecessary branches, so then the plant is sending all of its energy towards rooting and not towards growing the vines. Then one of the other things you're looking for when you're pruning, you can kind of see on this branch here how we've got the main stem coming up, we've got a branch coming off, and then we've got this little branch coming out in the armpit. You just want to come through, pinch those little armpit branches right off. And that's kind of like just like we did with the lower branches. We want the plant sending its energy towards what we want to grow. These plants are an indeterminate variety of tomatoes, so they will just keep growing and growing and growing. Anytime they touch the ground, it'll send down new roots. At the beginning of this year, when I cleaned my garden out back in the early spring, I pulled out tomato vines from last year that were 20 feet long. If it's putting that much energy towards growing, that's a bunch of energy it wasn't putting towards fruiting. And I am trying to grow tomatoes, not trying to grow vines. Then the last thing I'm doing here with these tomatoes is I'm trying to take them, and what I'm doing is I'm pulling them through the hog panels here and kind of interweaving them so I don't have to tie them up. I think eventually I'll probably have to use some string in some places, but so far I've been able to just weave them in and out through the hog panels to keep them trellised up. I haven't had to tie any. The other thing I'm doing for weed suppression besides the mulching is, you may have noticed in the background in the rows, I've got all these black tarps laying on the ground. And you can use any kind of tarp really, but what I'm using is it's some pieces of EDPM roofing rubber that we happen to have, and we cut them into strips. And what you can do is, especially since they're black, they superheat and they sterilize the soil underneath. They kill all of the plants that are growing there, and they also will sterilize any seeds that may have been left behind in the ground. So as warm as it's been, I've been able to move them every couple of days. It had been about every week I was moving them, but now since it's a lot hotter out, I'm able to move them every couple of days. You can see here, I just moved it in this row, virtually no green left behind. Kind of the same for over here. You can kind of see right here, this has only been here for a couple of days. It just completely kills it and kind of sterilizes it all. And then it takes quite a while before anything will grow back. And now here, before I wrap this up, I'll go ahead and give you guys a quick tour around and show you how everything's doing. You kind of already seen the tomatoes, but I'll show you how everything else is doing. So it's not always all rainbows and butterflies. If you watch the first gardening video, you'll remember that here is where I planted onions, I planted carrots down there, I planted a bunch of broccoli over here, and I didn't do anything for weed suppression, so the weeds completely took over. So a couple of days ago I had to bring the lawnmower in here and just run it all over, and I'm going to use these tarps now, like I just showed you. I'm going to use these tarps to try to get this sterilized over here, and I'm going to try to use this section of the garden for some fall crops. So I'll try the broccoli again, since that's supposed to be a cool weather crop anyways. I'll try the broccoli again. I'll probably try some kale, some spinach, some leafy greens, that type of stuff. So that'll give me a month and a half to get this all sterilized over here and get it prepped to try some fall stuff. These bush marigolds I planted are going absolutely nuts. I mean, you can see the size of this one. The paste tomatoes, they're the biggest so far, but I'm getting the most fruit so far here on the tappies. Just about every plant has some fruit on it out of the tappies. As I was pruning just now, there's a few on the pastes, there's a few over in the next row, over there on the grapes, and then there wasn't really anything down on the end on the truffles. The trellis here, the loofah gourd trellis, they're just growing like crazy. As soon as it warmed up, they started just going gangbusters. They're doing pretty good over on the other trellis. It doesn't quite get the same sun that this one out here in the middle does. And then unfortunately, the beans that I put in right after I planted them, a stupid mole went right down and knocked them all loose. So I got them put back in the ground, but none of them are doing very well, unfortunately. So I was able to start some new ones. I put them in a pot here up front. I'll show you those in a second. But those are doing significantly better. They've only been in the ground about 2 weeks, and they're doing better than the ones that are in the ground here that have been in for 6 weeks. And the marigold wall I got here on the edge, they're doing pretty good. Starting to get lots of big, pretty flowers. The peppers were kind of the same as the gourds. They weren't really doing anything there for a while, but now some heat showed up and they're starting to take off. And then last over here, the sweet potatoes, they're really starting to do the same too. And it's not too much of a surprise it took a little bit for the sweet potatoes to get going, because sweet potatoes are a tropical plant. So when we were, hanging out in the 70s and it was cloudy and rainy there for about 3 weeks solid, they just really didn't do much. And here we got those beans that I just planted, I just mentioned. Said they're doing significantly better than the ones that are in the ground. They already look better. And then the carrots that are coming up over here in the pots. They're looking super cool. And last but not least, we got the corn here in the back going nuts. It's the 1st of July and it's up past my waist, so the old knee-high by July, we're in there, we're looking good. Then one cool little bonus with all of the pruning and all the weeding that I get to do, I get to take it back and put it in the chicken coop. And the girls absolutely love to scratch through it. They like to peck the leaves, eat the leaves off of it. Any of the bugs that have been crawling around in it, they snatch those right up. So none of that stuff goes to waste. So just to wrap up real quick, my big tips: when you water, it's best to do it early in the morning. If you can't get to it early in the morning, you want to do it later on in the evening after the heat of the day. Make sure you get some kind of mulch down around your plants. Help suppress the weeds, help retain moisture. Make sure you're pruning. Prune young when the plant is young to develop roots. Prune when the plant is older to develop fruits. And if you don't want to be pulling weeds all the time, have a plan. On the tomatoes and the beans and the gourds, I had a plan, and I'm maybe spending 10 minutes a day weeding. Over here, I did not have a plan, and you can tell. So that'll wrap her up there for the old garden update. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button. If you have any questions on any of the methods that I'm doing, or you have any suggestions on ways that I should switch it up, be sure to leave that down in the comments section. And if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more what we got going on here at Chanyata, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you can get notifications when the new videos come out. Until next time, guys, see ya.